Carson Beck is coming back for another year at Georgia. He will be back for 2024. What does it mean for Carson Beck? What does it mean for Georgia? What does this mean for Georgia when it comes to their potential college football playoff aspirations this coming season, or 2024 rather? We'll talk about all that right now, but first things first, make sure you're subscribed right here. We have right around 70% of y'all that have not yet subscribed but are still watching. If you're already watching, just go ahead and hit that subscribe button for us. We appreciate y'all so much in advance for that. So when it comes to what this means for Georgia, I think to me it's pretty straightforward. As an offense, you can continue to now build upon what you did last season. There's no guessing with what this offense is going to be next year. This past season, you scored 37 points a game. If Carson Beck were to go to the NFL, who could blame him? Probably had a pretty decent draft grade, you'd have to imagine, but you'd go to an unknown commodity. More than likely, that would have been Gunnar Stockton. And this is not to say anything about Gunnar Stockton. It's to say more about Carson Beck, because this is the other thing. Carson Beck will be going into his second season as the guy at Georgia, his first full year as the guy, rather, at Georgia, in Mike Bobo's system. And anytime, if you're a quarterback, you get to go one full year to the next full year, you go from being, I think, conversational to fluent in the offense. And that's exactly what I think Carson Beck is going to do this upcoming season. And to be clear, he was already really freaking good last year. 72% completion percentage is what Beck was throwing last year. Okay, so that means, one, he was accurate. Two, he knew where to go with the football. You give him a whole nother year, though, give him a whole nother offseason. Because remember, last spring, he wasn't necessarily given the job until a little bit before we got to that first game. And it felt like he was the guy out of spring ball after seeing the G-Day. We're like, yeah, that's probably the guy. But again, it wasn't necessarily his team, or he wasn't the guy until we got to really games being played. So now getting that full cycle, I think it's going to do wonders for him. I think, again, it'll do wonders for Georgia's offense. Because I don't have a ton of questions about the defense if Kirby Smart, Glenn Schumann, and Will Muschamp are running the show. And now, with your starting quarterback coming back, with your offensive coordinator and him getting another year, and you scored 37 points a game last season, threw for maybe when it's all said and done, he'll be in that 4,000-yard range. He's at over 3,700 right now. Yeah, you feel pretty good about your chances with Carson Beck running this thing going forward. And to be real now with Carson Beck, this isn't enormously surprising with looking at what his story has been like at Georgia. This is the same guy now that waited his turn for years to eventually get his shot to be the guy in Athens. So it's no surprise he's going to wait his turn once again for another year to get his shot at the NFL. And I don't think this is a situation where if you're Carson Beck, you couldn't have gotten drafted fairly highly. There's a bunch of variables out there with pro days and combines and, what different teams think of you like that. That's all a big question mark, but I have to believe with what Carson Beck did this past season at Georgia, I think he put a lot of scouts on notice. I think he showed he can play at the next level, but now getting another year to probably check some boxes that he would like to check this upcoming season in 2024 at Georgia from a team perspective, grow even more in that offense under Mike Bobo. I think this is a great, great fit. And to be real now, this always, to me, made the most sense when it came to Carson Beck and his prospects at the NFL. Again, not because he couldn't have been a phenomenal NFL quarterback next season, right? He wasn't ready for it. But when I look at the overall quarterback market when it comes to this year versus next year, this season there's the obvious of Caleb Williams and Drake May. So if you're Carson Beck, you're pushing for best case, maybe you find yourself at QB3 when it comes to where you stand with the rest of the field. Then you factor in Jaden Daniels as well in the season he had. Maybe you're somewhere around QB4 is how I would imagine NFL scouts would view that whole conversation. Look at next year, though. Who definitively are you putting ahead of Carson Beck before the 2024 season to be QB1 in that class? Shedeur Sanders? I take Carson Beck. Riley Leonard? Super talented. He could have a great season next year at Notre Dame. I still take Carson Beck at the time of us recording this right now. I think Carson Beck has every opportunity, by nature of what the class will be next year, to be the guy when we get to the NFL draft conversation that next spring. Now also, this is important. Rusty Mansell of Dogs HQ, during a live stream over on their channel, get a membership at Dogs HQ to get dialed in for all things Georgia. Second, subscribe to their YouTube channel because they had a great show and a great conversation about this. And he said something that I thought was right on the money. You look at Georgia's schedule next year, man, the Gauntlet, the Hunger Games they will have to run through to get to where they want to go. One, if they get through that, Carson Beck will have a ton of skins on the wall, even more than he already has right now. Second, if you're able to lead Georgia to an SEC title through that gauntlet that they're running through, which is Clemson and Atlanta, which is not an SEC game, but still a difficult game, at Alabama, at Texas, both SEC games, what questions do you have about Carson Beck at that point in time? Like, the filter you're running his resume through will be better or as good as anybody else in the entire country at the quarterback position. You'd have to imagine, too, going from year 1 to year 2, they'll put a little bit more on his plate based on what they did this year and building off that next year. It also sounds like him coming back, a fair amount of that had to do with the optimism around who'd come back on the offensive line, so keep an eye on that. But I'm just saying, when it comes to Georgia and what this means for them, like, give me the odds today on what Georgia is to win the national title in 2024, and I'm taking that. Because Kirby Smart, Glenn Schumann, Will Muschamp, if they're running the defense, I don't care who's on that defense or who's leaving, who's going. Like, I feel good about that defense as long as those individuals are in charge of that operation. Then you take an offense that scored 37 points a game. You bring back the OC and the quarterback, the two most important parts of that whole operation. I feel good about that. Also, you're telling me that there's a chance the quarterback gets better from year 1 to year 2 in that system. That's kind of the expectation. I understand the schedule is ridiculous, but you prop the door open even a little bit more with expanding the playoff. Let's be crazy and say Georgia doesn't win the SEC. Let's just say for some reason they find themselves in the same spot they were this past year where they get to Atlanta and they lose and they're outside looking in. Like, does anybody really want to see Georgia in a tournament situation right now? You're telling me if there was a 12-team playoff this season, Georgia wouldn't be picked by a lot of these experts? Tell you what, I'd pick Georgia in a 12-team playoff right now. And at this point in time, again, I would take the odds on whatever Georgia is to win the national title this upcoming season in 2024 with the news of Carson Beck coming back. So huge for Georgia. I think it's great for Carson Beck when it comes to as the NFL's prospects, and it's going to be crucial now for Georgia to have their guy in Carson Beck moving into the new SEC because like we just said with that schedule, man, it'll be a gauntlet. It'll be phenomenal to watch, and for Georgia fans, you would imagine it'll be a lot more enjoyable to watch, a little bit more confidence in watching that with number 15 back there, slinging the pill for you like a shady pharmacist. We appreciate y'all being locked in. Make sure you're subscribed. Follow me on Twitter and on Instagram. Tweet at me, DM me. Let me know how you feel about Carson Beck coming back for another season in Athens as your starting quarterback. Appreciate y'all. Love y'all. Going to keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.